Oh yeah, please sit down. Please sit down. Please sit down. Yes. I'm just do a brief rundown of his profile. So Olaoluwa Akinloluwa is a public health and global health security expert with 10 years working at all levels of global public health design and delivery, with active project experience across Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. Olaoluwa has a deep expertise in public health emergency planning and response, biosecurity policy, as well as optimizing governance and service delivery for healthcare. Olaoluwa has recently been an advisor to SC national and regional negotiations on health security, like the WHO Pandemic Accord, the review of the IHR 2005, etc., military civil collaborations for health security in Nigeria, and multilateral and bilateral instruments in West and Central Africa. I'm sure you all in development understand all of these things. Olaoluwa is currently working with the Middle East and Africa team at IQVIA, a consulting firm in life sciences. So today he will be talking to us, and I'm sure he's going to do justice to the topic: building career blocks, elevating your profile for the career man and woman. So let's make welcome. I'm sure you all know who Mr. Ola is. Let me not say whose boo he is, but you'll find out. So let's make welcome Mr. Ola Akinloluwa.
Thank you. Thank you all for that. I'm pausing now just to check, because normally when I do this, my heart would be beating as if there's a lion in the room, but it's not. So it shows that there's a lot of love in this room. Thanks for that. I'm told I don't have a lot of time, so just dive right in. I think that's like sufficient introduction for who I am. Please let me know if you can hear me. Yes. So, and because of the way I've worked over the last, 10 plus years, whenever I give speeches like this, no, not speeches, or whatever like this, I use slides. So you would please indulge me. I'm using a lot of notes. So I'll be reading from this. I don't have the, the ability to freestyle like some people do. In any case, let me establish some caveats before we start. The first is that whatever I'm saying here is basically things that I have learned to be true in the past 10 years of my career, but also things that I have learned from watching and seeing my friends and my colleagues move through their career. Some of those things obviously are things that they've done or that I have done that have resulted in, good stuff. Some of them are cautionary tales. And all of these principles, I'm repeating them to myself in this session as notes to myself, because I don't always adhere to them. I don't always do them. When I have let big opportunities go, or when I've had some cautionary tale in my life, it's because I don't pay attention to the things that we're going to discuss today as much as I should. So even though they are, I hope that they are useful to you, but it's important to note that they are essentially out of my personal experience. I am a 6 foot tall, very socially awkward man working in Abuja. So the way things work out for me in corporate spaces might be different from you, a woman working in this kind of space. So there might be some nuances. But overall, this is This is just learnings from my life. Okay. So we're talking about five things, time permitting. Hopefully, I can, cover all the 30 minutes. Sometimes I finish these things in 7 minutes. So the first thing is the drive. The second thing is um, mastering language for your career. The third thing is seeking out communities. The fourth thing is pacing yourself. And the fifth thing is knowing when to leave. The first and second are targeted directly at people who are in the early phase of their careers, first 5 years of a career. We want to look at how you can put yourself in the driving seat as often as you can in the spaces where you find yourself. The other parts are for people like me looking to get into the final quadrant of of seniority in your field. So let's get started. So the first thing is driving. And what do I mean by that? So the easiest way to explain this, and I think the easiest way that I've had it explained by someone on Reddit, is that imagine that you are part of a team. And so my examples will often be like this. I hope, there's enough commonality between the kind of work I do and what your experiences are for it to make sense. But imagine you're part of a team that is reviewing a document. The document is maybe a report that is part of an output for a project you're doing, or maybe the report itself is the project, right? It's like when we were reviewing a legislature, like a law that's to be passed by the National Assembly, and then you and your team members are in a room, or you're on a Zoom call or Teams call or whatever, and somebody needs to project the document being reviewed. The person who projects the document and who makes the changes as you all collectively look at the document line by line is in this particular use of the word drive, the person who is driving. How well the person drives depends on, how well the person knows how to drive. So an ideal situation is that you as the driver, whether you are the team leader or whether you are the technical expert in the room or not, if you are the person holding the document being reviewed, you are the one making the changes, you have the power to pace everyone else. You have the power to say, let's stop here, let's think about this, let's do that, etc. And even the most senior person in the room would listen to you because you are the person making the changes. It's often the case that these kind of roles, this kind of very pedestrian roles, are given to very junior people, and often people don't know how to make the best of them. So it's not just reviewing documents, it's also maybe planning an event. Sometimes you want to set up an event and you are handed like the logistics of it. Or you maybe you want to do an advocacy visit and somebody is handed the job of doing the scheduling with the person, that kind of thing. It may seem like it's the errand end of the work, but it contains a lot of opportunities for people who are just emerging in their careers to display ownership, to drive conversations, and to facilitate. A lot of times, when you are new in an organization or you are, entry level, it's often very difficult to, especially if you are part of a big, complex team. It's very difficult to stand out. What I'm about to show you, or what I'm telling you now, is the easiest way to stand out. To find something, whatever it is, in what you're doing, and own it, and be the person who is owning it. And in a lot of instances, nobody's going to trust you with. I mean, I manage a few teams, and because of the kind of timelines we work with, there's some tasks I will not give to some people at all, because we don't want three review iterations on one item. But if you are able to find yourself, push yourself into places where you pick up these tasks, you are going to both stand out within your team, with other stakeholders and the clients, and move very quickly. So let's go through my notes very quickly. I wanted to give you guys an example of one time that I inadvertently was in a position to drive. And a good example is, I mean, it happens a lot in my life. A lot of the times that I've found myself, that I've been able to build any kind of reputation around what I can do, or the knowledge I have, is because I've picked up activities like this. A good example, by the way, is that Nigeria was doing a review of some articles for an international treaty, and I somehow found myself in that committee. And then everybody in the committee were like, director level. So although the committee had like rapporteurs who could read the articles for everybody to hear so that we can discuss it, the chairman of the committee, if you attend University of Abuja, you probably know him, Professor Abugu, decided that he likes the sound of my voice and said, please read for us. And I mean, at first glance, going to sit down and read when there are like 3 rapporteurs in the room seems like, but of course I also kind of like the sound of my voice. So I decided to read. And by the end of that session, 3-day workshop, as a matter of fact, we did maybe 10 workshops in that series. But by the end of the first or the second, I had become the de facto co-chair of that committee, because basically I was holding a mic. If anybody wants to talk, the person has to raise their hand. But I basically then reserved the first how do you call it? The first opportunity to comment on something. By the end of that series, anyway, what to say is that I became like co-chair to him, and it would never have happened if I didn't take up that task, which seemed at the surface like pedestrian. One of the things, so let's go through quickly. One of the things doing this will look like, if you're not careful, is that it looks like you're doing things that you're not supposed to do, right? A lot of times, as a young person in an organization, you have defined tasks. You are like maybe an assistant to somebody, or you are given clerical admin roles, or you're given a specific thing. You are a monitoring and evaluation assistant, something specific. And within the remit of that specific thing, there's generally often no opportunity to do anything, to lead anything. You are just maybe filling a spreadsheet and submitting it every month, and if there's an event, you would what is that thing? You move the slide on the projector. If you find yourself in that kind of position, you need to deliberately look for things that you can own that are completely outside of your TOR and do them. And the only way to break out of a mold you've been casting is to constantly look for extra work. It will look like extra work. In fact, it is extra work, but you need to look for extra work. I I tell people that if you find yourself in an organization, I mean, young people who are new in organizations, and you find people who are complaining about the amount of work they are doing and about how much, it's not their father's work, that kind of thing, you should please remove yourself from that kind of settings, because the only way as a young person that you can demonstrate competence and ownership is to find more work wherever you can find it and do it. I remember my first few weeks in Solina, which is the management consultant firm I worked at. I was it like 7 p.m., 8 p.m. I used to work till maybe 10 p.m. in fact then. Anyway, it was very in the evening, and I saw that some of the senior guys in the room were talking about designing a flow chart for doctors to explain first line, second line regimen of HIV drugs, that kind of thing. And they didn't know how to do it. So I was like, well, I can do this on Corel Draw. They're like, oh, you can? I was like, yeah. They're like, okay, let's sit down and do it. So I sat down with them, all of them. I knew nothing, of course, about HIV, drugs, or anything. I'd just left university studying psychology. Anyway, over like 2-3 hours, I helped design that, and then went back and forth, shared it with someone to get notes, and all of that. And I was involved in that process. That experience or that interaction with them, the fact that I was able to be there, and I'll tell you one quick trick to make sure you're able to do this well. Meant that I exposed myself to leading things in the organization. My movement within Solina, my progressive movement within Solina, I was in Lafayette, moved to Kano, moved from the HIV project, which was largely implementation. I don't know how to explain this, other than it was implementation, and what I was doing in Kano was consulting. My movement between that was because I did a lot of things like this, things that were not my job to do. I just picked them up, and it solved the problem that was like that people were looking for solutions for. Another thing is that it may seem that your teammates may think that you are performing high service and looking for work and trying to please someone. I think that is okay for them to think that. If you if you must stand out, there must be a sense of eagerness on your part to do work. I wanted to leave this till later to say it, but I think the flip side of this, which is someone who runs away from work, who is not just runs away from work, but runs away from owning work, from owning a thing in work, is the most, for a team lead, a project manager, whatever, it's the most, I think the best way to put it is this Gen Z expression. I don't know if it's a Gen Z expression or millennial expression, but this expression where they say something gives you the ick, right? You know, like you are on a date with somebody and the person picks their nose and eats it or something. But if you find someone, recently I had a colleague who reported to me, and the first few weeks when we were working, she sounded very smart and engaging, says all the right words. And in fact, she's told me one time that, she just left church right now and she was working very hard and she's going to work on this thing. I'm like, what are you doing in church? She says she's a children's teacher. I'm like, I'm also a children's teacher. So I thought, we're getting on a good foot. But it turns out that she's someone who is this not my father's work kind of person. Anytime she has to do something extra, you must hear about it, and there's nothing more frustrating for someone who manages people than someone who is not willing to just own something or do something extra. If I feel like I can't rely on you for something, Um, it's just difficult for me to include you in my planning. So if you're part of an organization and people know that this one you can't play with her, she will give it back to you. You can't give her too much work. She's very delicate or something like that, or she's fire for fire. People will avoid you, and you would remain in your small role and stagnate, unless of course you are like the daughter of the CEO or something. Um, so let me just give you some notes on how to drive. The first note is that if you want to drive something, if you want to walk up to your boss and say, you see that document, that report, I want to do the first draft of it. I know it's not like you don't think I can do it, but I would like to take a stab at it. I know we need the final draft by the end of this month, so I'll send something in 3 days so that you can give me direction. If you want to do anything like that, or you want to, something which is common, and another example of driving, and especially driving in public, is imagine you go to a workshop where there are like other stakeholders, the public training or something, and people go into breakout groups, and breakout groups often need somebody, right, to lead the conversation and to go and present in plenary. Um, always volunteer to be the person that does that. I don't always do that because I'm very shy. If you have not noticed, I'm the shyest person you know. Um, but there is absolutely, if you know, okay, I'll come back to that later. But it's always take the chance to do that. Always. If you go to a meeting like that, people will forget anything that happens. People will forget, even if you make a mistake, you embarrass yourself. People will likely forget. But people will not forget that that you showed initiative, that you showed you were forward-leaning in your posture, that you showed competence when they were together, and they might not remember why or what you did, but when they see you another time, they will know that, oh, this guy is a very useful guy. Anyway, always do that when you're in public. But the first thing I wanted to say is only look to drive when you have some kind of understanding of what's going on. And if there's an opportunity to drive that you're looking forward to, go and read as much as possible. Go and like catch up. You need to be able to contribute. Let's use that basic example I used. If you are like reviewing a document for the group and you put it on your laptop and you shared your screen and you are making the changes. If the only contribution you are making to that is what people tell you to do, you are just the secretary of the group. You are not really driving. You need to be able to contribute. You need to be able to say, guys, hold on. Can we go back to slide 2 or something? You need to be able to make meaningful contribution, even if it's small contribution. Even if your contribution is only to ask questions. One of the smartest way to contribute when you don't really know something, but is to know the right questions to ask. And sometimes you enter a room and you leave the room with people thinking you are like such a smart person, and the only thing you did was ask like 3 important questions. You're like, hold on, guys, what exactly do we mean by that word? And then people are like, and then it causes like a three-hour discussion, and they're like, oh my God, you see the trouble you caused. And you're like, yeah. So you need to know a little bit, because if you don't, not only will you make a mess of yourself, but you also just become like the secretary. And it's even worse for women, because if you're a woman and you volunteer for a task like that often, very patriarchal men in the space will probably just treat you like a secretary. So you need to actually make contributions, especially if you are in public. You are doing it, say, in a workshop, in a public. You're taking a task that has a public-facing thing, and you volunteered and said, okay, I'm going to deliver this. You need to know just a little bit about it. And if you have the opportunity to plan ahead, please go do everything you can to study and understand. All right, so, and driving means if you pick up something that you want to own and you want to drive, whether it's something as small as a review within a meeting, you're just like, noting everything everybody's saying in a meeting or whatever. Or you take a piece of a project and say, I want to deliver the first draft of this. I will plan the logistics for this. Or I will just do the budgeting for this and share with the team. Make sure you actually own the responsibility for it. What do I mean by that? They say that the buck stops at the table of the most senior person in an organization, right? If something happens in this church now, and somebody wants to be held accountable, it will still go all the way to Pison, right? Because it's the Ogakpakapaka here. But there are several levels of hierarchies, and just assume, once you've said, I'm going to do this, assume that the buck entirely ends with you. So if, for instance, something is due tomorrow, and it's not done, well, it means you can't sleep this night, right? It needs to be done because the buck stops at your end. I see this attitude a lot where people are like, okay, well, I'm not going to kill myself. It's my father's thing, or whatever people say these days. And it's easy to say that if you have like a lot of bosses who pick it up and just do it. And I do it all the time, where I give somebody a task, it's supposed to be done tomorrow. You show up and say, where is it? And they're like, their neighbor's Prado caught fire this morning. This is like real example. So the neighbor was about to go out with the kids on school runs, and the Prado caught fire, so he was helping him, and now he couldn't finish it. It's like, okay, good. And then because it has to be done, so you pick it up and do it. He's doing that because he knows that really, in reality, the buck doesn't stop at his table. If they're going to ask, either the client or somebody ask, why is this thing not done? It is me that will answer, right? Or somebody else up the ladder. So when you're a junior in an organization, a lot of times no buck stops at your table at all. The work you're doing fits into what other people are doing. But assume that it does stop at your table. Let your first draft be as close as possible to the final draft. That's what it means to own, right? And to drive. Let it be as if whatever it is you're doing is the final thing that the client or the whatever is going to see. Okay, so looks like I'm doing well on time. And finally, about driving. There is this common saying, and I think people say it sometimes in a negative way, which is that in order to move to the next level in your career, and I think this is what all of this boils down to, you need to start performing at the next level that you're going to be promoted to. And then you see a lot of people complaining that, I'm doing the work of a whatever the other level is, right? The only way you can actually demonstrate to someone that you can do what they want to promote you to is that you're actually doing it, right? In my organization, for instance, there's a role called, often in most of our practices, so we have a lot of business units, and sometimes the nomenclature might change depending on the units. We have like 90,000 staff, so lots of hierarchies. Anyway, there's a role called engagement manager. An average engagement manager is looking at 6 to 12 or 15 projects at any given time. And these projects can be, complex 5-year projects or just three-month evaluations or something like that. He's responsible for that, even though each of them has like a project manager or something managing each one of them. An average project manager should have 2 or 3 projects they're managing. If you're a project manager, and there are a lot of project managers in my firm who have just 1 project, maybe because it's very complex and requires you to like put your attention on it. And you see, there was one of my colleagues was a project manager, and she's been on one project for a year because it was a very complex project. The client was the World Bank, and the World Bank is can be very demanding, or some of their strategy officers. Anyway, so she was worried. She's been in the firm for 2 years, managing just that one project. And she's like, she can't wait for this project to end because no one would trust you with the role of a engagement manager if the only thing you've demonstrated is that you can manage just one project. Nobody knows if they give you oversight over 5 projects, you would just collapse or like, burn out or something very quickly. You've not demonstrated that. So in order for you to move to engagement to the next level, you need to show that you have the tolerance to manage 3 to 5 projects at once. So in the same way, if you are like in the minimum, you need to find ways to start showing that I can do the thing that is at the next level, or even the level after that one. You need to consistently show it to whoever needs to know that. And again, to just make this point again, that means necessarily you'll be working harder than anyone else. If you're in the first 3-5 years of your career and you're not working, so hard that you sometimes go into the restroom to cry, you shouldn't do that. But if you're not working that hard, if you're waking up in the morning, doing your like 2-hour gym session, then you come to the office, then do 2-hour lunch, then you close at 4. What do people do in the evening? I don't know. You go to Bible master class. If that's like your day, it's very chill. And then when you get home, you rewatch episodes of I don't know what people watch these days, Friends. I'm happy for you, but you should find ways to work harder. It's the period when you need to do a lot of the hard work. I'm assuming anyway that entry level for most people mean mid-20s, right? And you should have all of the energy to do that then. So doing this, finding opportunities within where you are to pick up things and own them and drive them, things that are not within your TOR, things that would demonstrate leadership potential for the next level, is going to mean ridiculous hard work, and you need to do that. So very quickly, I think that's it for the first point. Are we doing good with time? Probably not. So the second point is that I think we need to master language. I'm saying this because, when I started, I said I'm also saying this as notes to myself. So this second point is also a note to myself, and a note to everyone, early stage career, late stage career. There's this thing that people do, ask on the internet, like what is the most impactful tool the humans developed while we were evolving? And some people say, oh, it's fire. It helps us cook food. It created a community gathering point in the evenings or whatever. But the most powerful tool the humans have developed, it's not fire. It's not the wheel. It's not algebra. It's language. It's our ability to use language to communicate, to inspire, to get people to work with you, to collaborate. And if language is that important, it means that for you to succeed anywhere in the world, you need to master language. The people who have succeeded well are people who have mastered language. And there's a common misconception that, mastering language means you have like a huge vocabulary, like what's the name of that ex-senator? And you can use all of the big words in your language. Or you can speak flowery language or something. No, that's not what mastering language is. There is this thing that Ogilvy, the celebrity advertiser guy, said. There's a quote, I think, from some Roman text, which goes something like, when and Tony spoke, people were like, "Oh my God, what a lovely speech!" But when Demosthenes spoke, people were like, "Let's go and burn the house of that guy." Um, Mastering language doesn't mean learning how to write fancy poetry or learning all the big words. It means learning how to effectively communicate. So let me give you a few quick few points about why that matters. Um, Number one, unless you're a pastor, okay, I should not be saying these things about pastors, but one of the things I grew up in, like, everybody around me were pastors, and I don't think any one of them was like highly educated or something. Um, and there are a lot of scenarios where the church I'm attending has like people with masters in the congregation, and the pastor can barely put two sentences together, and that doesn't stop people from listening to what he has to say and understanding it. Um, but unless you are a pastor, you can afford that level of competence with language. You need to master the basics of the language and go beyond the basics. Um, your How people assess yourselves, your competence, um, starts from hearing you talk. Just talk normally. If you have like an interface with a client or with one of the persons that has influence over your career growth, and you're having a casual chat. It's not even a technical chat. It's not a chat about work. It's just a chat about, oh my God, see what's happening with the tariffs or something. And you can't put your use of language is suspect. People like that have very little time, and they need only little information to make decisions. As soon as it seems like this person can't use language, they make a very, very bad heuristic. I mean, use that as a heuristic to make a decision about you. So it's important that you master language because it projects an air of competence. But the most important reason why you should master language is that it actually makes your work easier. Um, there is a saying somewhere, I think they emerged from Silicon Valley, and that's because the work in Silicon Valley is mostly coding, right? That if the amount of time you spend doing your work is more than 25% talking to your teammates and talking to other people, writing emails, chatting, or whatever, then you guys are inefficient, right? You need to spend as little time as possible talking and actually doing the actual work. There's an example I have. There is this professor in Ghana that we needed to engage him to do some work. So we sent him an email to say, "Hi, Professor, whatever. You've been whatever. We want to talk to you about something." 14 emails later, we still haven't. There's no clarity about. He still hasn't like. It's clear that he wants to join because we signed like an LOA a month ago, but there was just this difficulty getting him across the line to just say, okay, let's get forward. When I'm just saying that to say, when you don't know how to use language, how to communicate, you spend a lot of your time and a lot of your teammates' time going round and round over things that could have been done in one single email response and reply. And so if you master language, you are able to be way more effective in your work. When you read something or when you send something to someone, the communication is as seamless as possible. I think I'm running short on time, so I should tell less stories and read out my points. Anyway, so unless your job is to actually communicate, if you're like the CEO of the firm, maybe 80% of your job is to communicate, right? But unless that's what you are, like CEO of a company or CEO of self-employed, you should learn to spend as little time as possible communicating. So two things very quickly about mastering language. The first is that you need to learn to write clearly. And you need to practice it as often as possible, write as often as possible, even if you're not publishing it on LinkedIn or whatever. You need to learn to write. There are three things about writing, which is the first is you need to learn to write concisely, clearly, and impactfully. So I have a very bad impulse of wanting to make my writing as flowery as possible. I have this terrible impulse of wanting to include, jokes and God knows what in my writing. There was one time I drafted an email to the director of disease surveillance in NCDC, and I was working on the thing I was going to attach to the email. Then I was playing around on the internet, and I stumbled on a word called homologate. And suddenly I was overcome with this impulse to include that word, to use it like now. So I put it in the email. Anyway, she's someone that we know, and she's like a friend. So I'm pretty sure she just rolled her eyes when she saw it. But but just to say, like when you're writing, you should avoid those kind of impulses to try to make people think you're smart by the amount of words you're using or the floweriness of the words you're using. The more concise your message, the better. And in pursuit of, when you're pursuing brevity, you often arrive at precision. So you can aim for precision. And one of the things I do, I remember early on in Solina, I would say, the way I write my emails, I would say, dear, whatever the person is. And then I would just jump to what I need to say. Whatever it is I need to say. And then one day, my boss, I sent an email and he called me and said, you didn't even, this person is, an older person. You didn't even say, I hope this meets you well, or something like that. I try to do that now. But the point is, when you're writing something, whether it's an article or an email or something, the person reading what you're writing should get what you're trying to say in the very fourth sentence, right? The very fourth, I've written maybe 2,000 letters to government or for government in my short career. And one of the rules is that, or one of the rules I follow is that when the person reading the letter reads the first sentence, because it's not everybody that has like time to read one page. Even before social media demolished our attention span, it was already hard to read, And so your message should come out as quickly as possible to whoever's reading it. So brevity, precision, and impact. People should feel like doing something after reading your message. Or rather, you should have what you need the person to do clearly stated in the message. Secondly, about mastering language is that one thing that I've tried to do to be better at the use of language is that I engage with very, very complex texts. I know that if you go on the internet, you see a lot of recommendations about the kind of books you should read. They have this list of 10 books, and in them you see things like, not to say these books are bad, but you see things like Rich Dad Poor Dad, or I don't know, Atomic Habits, or whatever. All these are good books, but they are often written in a very easy to understand way. The target of the book, or the intent of the person writing the book, and the team behind them, is to target it at the lowest common denominator, that the most distracted person and the person with the least level of whatever should be able to understand this. And that's good, and those books can be useful. But in order to move to the next level of your use of language, look for books that are not written for lay people, preferably in your field. Sometimes they are like general books, and engage with them. They will be hard to read. You you would have to drop them 10 times before you get beyond the first 10 pages. You know this joke on the internet that everybody who posts pictures of the books they read in the first 10 pages. It will be boring, it will be hard, but you need to stay with it. That's the ability to stay with complex technical text like that improves your ability to engage otherwise, to write, to think, and to engage in intense moments. I remember one call I had where I had, I'm out of time, so let me just be moving very quickly. But we had like a catch-up call with a client with Gavi, someone senior in Gavi, and it was like, oh, this is where we are on the project, and we're done, and we're about to leave. But I think someone had annoyed her somewhere, maybe at home, maybe somewhere. So she said, no, we're not leaving. And then she put out the document. We didn't even write the document. Someone else wrote the document. And she said, we need to review it line by line. So we'll spend the next hour, 30 minutes reviewing that document. And I suspected that if we had, fumbled that session, we probably would have lost that contract. But just to say that your ability to engage over a sustained period of time with very technical, very complex text would improve if you engage with those deliberately. Don't wait until work forces you to go and look for very complex text. I can share some recommendation if you want. So that is about mastering language generally. But the thing I wanted to say, the main thing I wanted to say here, I'm already out of time actually, is that every field has a peculiar language they speak. If I take the language, the Christianese we speak here, some of which is like, time and space collapse for you, and I take it to a physicist and I say, time and space collapse for you, like, are you okay? Language, what words mean, how you use them, differ from context to context. And if you want to move very quickly, and this particular point is for if you're young in the career ladder, you need to understand what words mean in your space. You need to understand how they are used. You need to understand the context. Because you can get into a pivotal moment. You can get into there are moments that divide your life into two, before and after, at any time. And it's a 40 seconds conversation where you are able to just demonstrate that you have like a basic grasp of what the issue is, can change your life. But I'm saying now, actually, that you don't even have to have a good grasp of the technical problems in your field. All you need to do is be able to speak the language of the field. For instance, in health security, there's something that events mean. Events mean that there has been a infectious disease case or death somewhere. And a deliberate event means that that disease was caused by someone with, ill intent, maybe a terrorist. So if you understand what words mean in your field, there was one document I saw produced by WHO, and I was shocked that, who convinced them to do that? It was a glossary of terms used in surveillance. And that's all it was, just a book with definitions. This is what this means. I think I saw something else, something like that. Find things like that in your field, and just understand them. Read them the way you would read, I don't know, your Bible. Well, maybe not. But just read them and understand them. And it makes your ability to engage, your ability to move very quickly, it also solves, if you're like me and have a lot of imposter syndrome, it helps ameliorate that. So very quickly, I'm doing badly, right? What? Okay, let me just say two things, and then I'll be done. Two more things. So the first thing is that I think you need to know how to pace yourself. Um, and when I say pace yourself, I mean, I've said earlier that you need to work ridiculously hard early on in your career. You need to find things that are not within your, scope and take them on. But as time goes on, you need to find how to pace yourself. There's a joke across the world about Europeans and how they don't do any work, um, how they have like wine in the afternoon and then have a siesta, how they disappear during summer. They actually disappear during summer. If you work with them and you email, there's the time. I mean, last year I was working with two teams, one in Gavi, one in Find. Whenever you email them the conversation, I get like around July and September, I get like 8 out of office notification, and some of them are like 6 weeks. They're off to like the Alps or something. One of them got very call and said, "Oh, she just came back from tending to her horses. She went to a race." Just to say that you need to find how to. I think Nigerians, we have this hustle culture. We must be doing something at any time, and even the times when the kind of breaks we take from work are filled with like our other hustle and our other hustle. You need to remove yourself from the context of work as often as possible. The reason why this is important, last thing I'll say about this, is that it is easier to catch up on the things you have not done that you're missing by taking breaks than it is to recover if you crash and burn. Um, I've seen people who have crashed and burned, and I've had many crashes myself. Um, Recovery is the most difficult thing. Um, just pray you don't. But we all think we can crash, but it is easier to catch up over time than to crash and burn. And final thing, I hoped that I would have more time to say this because this is highly nuanced. But you need to know when to leave a party. There's that song, one of those songs I like the most, which is that the Gambler song. You need to know when to fold. Um, um, I've quit twice in my life from places. The first time I probably quit too early. The second time I quit too late. But you need to balance. I mean, people say that I quit too early, but and ostensibly the reason I gave that I quit was that, oh my God, I can work in a toxic environment. But I was also just really, really tired. And I quit without having like a job on hand. I didn't have job. I didn't have, 1 year worth of savings or whatever like that. But so 3 quick points about that. The first is that if you've been in a place for long and you're stagnating, and the work is no longer challenging, there is a danger, especially if you've been there for long and the amount of things you're doing, the kind of things you're doing is now routine. There's a danger you get so bad at your ability to solve problems or to do anything or to motivate yourself to do things. And it does so much damage to your ability to do that when you eventually leave, it's like when I like this expression. Well, not that I like it, but I find it compelling. When the psalmist said that made the cunning of my right hand, or spoke about the cunning of the right hand, it was a curse actually. But it's possible to lose the cunning of your right hand if you stay in a place where you're not thriving, where you hate the work you do and you hate the people you work with. You think the goal is misaligned with your goals, you are stagnated, and you continue to stay because, well, you don't have another job or something. This is a risky thing to say. But I think it's possible. You need to give yourself the courage, and it's possible to leave without something on hand. I know this is not like a popular thing to say, but it's more healthy. Um, I have been in a place where I've stayed too long, and when I eventually left, um, my transition period, I mean, I left to a place that was more fast-paced, much more challenging, required much higher standards, and was always going to be difficult to adjust normally. But I had been in a place where nobody challenged me, and I didn't challenge myself also because I had come to not like the place too much, um, and it was difficult. If I'd stayed for like 1, 2 more years, I don't know what would have happened. Um, I don't know how bad it would have been. Um, I'm way out of time.
Okay, so it's Q&A time, please. So if we have questions, you can raise your hand.
Good morning. Okay, so I initially had two questions, but your last point just helped me clarify the second one. The one I wanted that you clarified was the I wanted to ask, when do you know, how can you relate hustling and knowing when to leave? Because like you said, we like to hustle, you like to keep pushing. I am a victim of staying in a place for too long, and at the end of the day I was even let go. You sit down, you hustle, you put in all the work and try to want to impress, push harder. You give yourself. Bottom line is the recovery was massive. But my second question is, you were saying to own up the drive point. You were saying we should learn to pick something and own up to it. What if you are I don't want to call it background player or something, like you know how to do certain things, you have ideas, but you're not normally the forefronter kind of person. You like to just be at the background, you give thumbs up to whoever wants to talk, because in my experience, or what I have seen, most of the people that even step out to do all these physical things don't have an idea of all this. They just pick points from some of us at the back and then push it forward. So what if you are that person that just likes to give points, support, push, and how do you now pick something to stand out in the organization? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. If you are that kind of person, I'm sorry for you. Um, I am that kind of person, actually. I would rather not talk. Um, like I said earlier, um, if there are people in the room and I want to stand up to talk, my entire body, my entire, what do they call it? Autonomic system feels as if there's a lion in the room. It's just, I just want to make a point, and my heart is beating as if. And sometimes my heart's not even beating. I just don't think it's necessary to talk. Um, People who are observant will know I've never asked a question or contributed during BMC. Anyway, I'm like that. But when it's work, you can't be like that. At the pain of death, even if you're going to die, you have to do it. You have to. It is the cost of operating in a space like that. Otherwise, people who, like you've said, people who know less than half of what you do would get ahead of you because they are bold and can talk. So there is nothing like being a background player when it comes to career and work. The only people who move forward are the people who are visible, unless you have like I don't know, like someone said here a few weeks ago, you have a champion who then takes your work and begins to champion it for you. Someone is actually doing what you're supposed to be doing, but you can't wait for that to come around. You need to work on that. You need to figure out a way to fix it. I am like that. If you leave me alone, I would. My best. I think my best way of functioning is to work. Just do a document and send to someone, uh, or just stand behind a Zoom call and talk or something. I am incredibly shy, but um, there are a lot of times when I have to do it. You just have to do it. And the thing that I think that I've done the least in my life, the regrets I have beyond, some things I should do, is that I have not spoken up enough. Um, my mom used to say to me, because I was a very, 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 very quiet child, I never said anything at home. She was worried that I was even mute at some point. But she used to say to me, Robert, that EPI is sorrow, Lori Burukutimber. Do you know what that means? It means your Oliburuku. Basically, it means your misfortune is rooted in your inability to talk. If you can't talk, whether it's just in interpersonal relationships or at work, mostly at work, you have to talk. Some people just, feel like it's unnecessary, but you have to. You have to talk. You need to go fix it if it's a problem. I hope that answers. There's something I didn't say before. I should have said before I started, which is, when I was saying that this is just my experience, I was also going to say that um, you need to take my advice with a pinch of salt, because I have been very, God has been very kind to me. um, I've done some really reckless things, but God has just been kind to me. Maybe after I quit, we I was part of a team that won some kind of, I don't know, £25,000 grant, and then I don't know, 2 months later, 3 months later, I got a project. Then I don't know, another month later, I got a job somewhere. I've been very lucky. I've been very lucky. But when I left the morning after my last day, um, I had dropped my laptop, and I brought out a new notebook I bought. And the first thing I wrote in the notebook was that I had made a big mistake. And throughout that period, actually, throughout my last month, and even weeks after the last month, there were conversations about, Ola, we can give you, a paid 1 month leave, just go rest and come back. But my family were like a little too proud. But I did know that the ideal thing maybe was to rest or something, and then maybe that decision wasn't maybe the right one or something. Um, but in the final analysis, I think I was in a place where. So that's one thing. My lesson from my quitting from that particular job was that I should have paced myself better. For close to 2 years, I did practically nothing else but worked. I worked. That was where I was working, and people joked that my way of relaxing was to come to work on Saturday and do more work. I didn't, and I didn't track how many hours I did. I'm sure I did like 16 hours of work, because most of my work actually was done out of hotels. I lived in Abuja, but I only lived like 3 days in 3 weeks in Abuja in the house I rented here. I was always in Kano or somewhere. And when you live in hotels, it's hard to, you wake up in the morning at 4 a.m. You're not doing anything. You're not making your bed or anything. You pick up your laptop, and then when you return home, there's something to be done. You order food. You're not cooking. It's like you can do 18 hours if you're not careful every day of work, and that was what my life for like 3 years. Um, the lesson was that I should have rested better. So yeah, I didn't have a backup plan. The grant that came in, by the way, was written way before I quit, so that might have been a backup plan, but it wasn't really a backup plan. I was just doing that by the side. I didn't have a backup plan, but please have a backup plan. Find something. And it doesn't have to be something that is actively bringing money, but just find something else that you would engage with. And if you're quitting to rest, maybe don't find something, just actually rest. I remember that when I quit, I didn't have a laptop, and I deliberately made the decision that I will not, a personal laptop that is, I will not buy one for like 2 weeks. So all I did was wake up in the morning, make food, jog around the area and read books. There was one particular book I was looking to read, so I decided to finish it. It's a huge book, War and Peace. All right. Okay, so how do you balance taking lead and being burnt out? So when I say you should pace yourself, one of the ways you can pace yourself is take large chunks of leave, like the Europeans do, go disappear for 4 weeks. Something else you can do is schedule breaks into your daily life. So, for instance, there are periods when things are intense. I decide that on this Saturday I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to sleep in as much as I can. I don't sleep in like that. I just can't sleep in the mornings. Um, and I would just maybe, I don't know, just take one day off. You're not doing anything. Like, I shouldn't be saying this in church, but um, rest should be rest, right? If you're managing people at work and then you come to church and you think you're resting by managing people, it's still work, right? Church work is still work. Um, Rest should be rest. If you're scheduling rest from work, you should rest from work. You should sleep. Your body is a thing that needs rest. Your mind, in particular, what you are resting is your mind. I mean, you're also resting your body, but your mind. And another thing is when you're resting, you necessarily need a change of context. What I do daily is make documents in Word and PPT. When I'm resting, I shouldn't be looking at any documents. I should be doing anything else but looking at documents. Maybe walking around, changing the tire of my car pointlessly. I don't, but something like that, something kinetic, something that is a completely different context from what you're doing. By the time you return to work, your mind is renewed, is energized, and you can re-engage. But if you spend, say, 10 days consecutively, waking up in the morning, opening your laptop and just looking at text, you become progressively ineffective and unproductive. I hope that answers the question. Thank
No,
you.
there's one question here. There's one question here.
Okay.
Hi, Boo. Well done, sir. Okay, so my question is more about, and I think I badger you a lot about this at home, so this is me putting you on the spot. It's about people who are maybe more advanced in their careers and maybe they've hit some sort of plateau. I asked one of the previous speakers this question as well, and one of the things she said was maybe explore consulting, explore doing some sort of side hustle or business that would help you grow, if not vertically within the organization, at least to expand your horizon, right? But from your experience, you're a senior consultant in your organization, for example. Let's say you rise to a very high level and you're thinking actively about what's next, where you go from there, and the options for other kinds of jobs are limited at that level. How do you navigate that? Other job options are limited. How do you navigate that?
Thank you, Boo. Um, I'm sorry. Thank you, Pastor. So there was a point that I was supposed to make that I didn't make. So there are the number of options that I think. I think we Africans, let me say, talk like fella. We Africans have a very bad habit. No, a very bad. We are not very good at two things. The first is producing knowledge around the work we do. I remember one of my bosses, his father had a adverse reaction to malaria, and she was looking online about information about adverse reaction to malaria and couldn't find it. Couldn't find a lot of useful information. And you know why? It's because most of the malaria burden is in Nigeria and places like that. If malaria was an issue in Europe, you will find a lot of resources on it. We don't produce knowledge. If you've risen significantly in your career and you are the senior place, you have lived experience, you have a lot of you should produce knowledge systematically. You can produce it in form of blog. You can produce it as something you share. You can even write a book. Um, I have a thing about writing books, but you can begin producing knowledge. One of the ways in which you deepen your expertise, if you've plateaued, that there's like like you've said, there's not a lot of places to move. The community or the space at the top is very small. Um, so often you have to wait for somebody to exit before you enter. I think that's what one of our speakers said anyway. In the meantime, one thing to do is produce knowledge. You can focus your energy in doing that. And producing knowledge means that you are establishing yourself in the space. Somebody was telling a story about how he was writing a paper and he kept seeing a reference. It's a name that kept popping up, and he had to check the guy. Like, who is this guy? He was writing a paper about machine learning or something, and he saw that there was one guy with 12,000 citations. He's 32 years old. He's like in the second year of his PhD, and he has 12,000 citations, if you know what that means. One of the ways you can establish yourself as an expert and like deepen the value that people place on you is to produce knowledge. I have a friend of mine who is the CEO of Money Africa. In fact, when he left service, by the time he left service, he had a blog that he just publishes stuff. Maybe Buhari did something in the economy. He's an economist. He was a first class economic graduate from IFE. He's like a year or two below Alaji. So he published. By the time he left service, he came to Abuja to stay with me. Channels TV was inviting him for interviews. He had no job. He was just a copper who had just finished copper because he published stuff. And I mean, maybe he had published 10 articles by then or something. Naturally, someone like that doesn't just stay without a job. In like 3 weeks after service, he got a job. And now he's much more careful how he publishes. He has like a Substack, if you know what that is. Please check that out. And he publishes maybe every 3 months, very detailed, sometimes 10,000 words, 15,000 words, detailed analysis of like the economic space. I think if you're senior enough and there isn't enough space, you can take on a project like that, begin documenting your work. And when a key opportunity opens up, that becomes like a reference point for who is making decision about who becomes the person to fill that role. Thank you for that question. I was going to say something else, but we're out of time.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Please let's appreciate Mr. Olaoluwa again. Fantastic session. That was a really, really fantastic session, and thank you so much for sharing such insight. I didn't realize time had gone. I was really, really enjoying, and I hope that some of the points that you hadn't even had a chance to share, we can sit down and still have more conversations. But thank you so much for sharing from your wealth of knowledge, and thanks to everyone for coming out. Again, as you know, the live class continues, and what we try to do is to really make this informative and something that you can really incorporate into your own personal lives. So please do continue to give us the feedback, and we hope to hear how this is making a difference in your life. Very quickly, I just want to mention that next week we'll be having again with us Paul Alaje, and he had come before, and he'll be again here next week. And of course, right after that, we're moving into the final part of this particular theme, which is business and finance. And so we'll be having a final speaker, and then we'll be transitioning into another theme. And so thank you so much for staying as we plan the next phase, which is going to focus more on social currency, I just want to ask that if there are any feedbacks, any thoughts, reflections you've had on this first phase, please do let us know. As you know, we're learning and trying to collate as much data on your experience as well. Now, the other thing I want to say is just to thank all those who have signed up for the mentorship program. And I trust you're finding it fun and helpful. The mentors, again, as you know, the mentors were onboarded, I believe, last week or a couple of weeks ago. And that has already continued. It's going to continue for at least the next 4 to 5 weeks. So please continue to engage your mentors, work with them, and let's make this something that really, really results in positive impact for you all. And so with that, just to say thank you again, and look forward to seeing you all next week.